A group of black civil servants says the federal government is resorting to stall tactics to deny them their day in court, nearly 2 years after they sounded the alarm on anti-black racism in the public service. More than 1,500 black federal employees have joined the proposed class action lawsuit, taking aim at what they describe as the government's wrongful failure to hire and promote black employees in the public service. The lawsuit alleges decades of discrimination and harassment against tens of thousands of black employees and job applicants who say they were subjected to racist comments and jokes and passed over for promotions or just not even hired in the first place. The effects of that exclusion were debilitating, with employees reporting anxiety, shame, and significant financial losses. The lawsuit is seeking $2.5 billion in damages, including compensation for lost income and other benefits. Joining me now with more on the lawsuit is one of its lead plaintiffs, Nicholas Marcus Thompson, Executive Director of the Black Class Action Secretariat. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicholas. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about when you first started to notice a pattern in your own life and in the lives of your black colleagues who are working for the Government of Canada that you went, you know what? This is discrimination. This is racism.
Well, when I joined the public service about 8 years ago, I immediately noticed that there was a very troubling trend. And that trend was that black employees were in entry-level positions, other racialized employees were just above that, and the leadership of the public service was reserved for white employees. And that I noticed workers working for 15 years, 20 years, and they're in the same position. And that has really culminated in significant psychological injuries for workers, mental health injuries, and as well as the financial losses. So, and that's where really I decided that we had to do something about it. And I started talking with workers across the public service, and they told me the same thing, that they were very well qualified and were being denied promotions, they experienced racism in the workplace. One worker was told that we should go back to the good old days where we had slaves.
And where we had slaves.
Correct. The manager told her we should go back to the good old days where we had slaves. And that manager faced no consequences. And it is that constant ability of public service leaders to make comments like that, and there's no consequences for it.
It's atrocious. It's atrocious, and that's very direct. And as you're saying, also this insidious, systemic racism where people are not being promoted. They're staying in the same job their entire career while their colleagues around them are promoted. People hear the stories and the numbers, but I think it's powerful when we have some of those examples. Can you share with us some of your story or some of your colleagues' stories that are involved in this lawsuit that have led you to this point?
Sure. The public service, black workers make up the largest racialized group in the public service. So that's 3.8% of the almost 300,000 public service. And black workers, black workers are the least paid in the public service. Despite being the largest group, it is the least paid group, representing just over 1% in the executive rank. To put that into perspective, the executive ranks of the public service has approximately 8,000 employees, and black workers make up just about 100 executives in the entire public service that prides itself in being inclusive and diverse and merit-based. But that is not the case for black workers. Many black workers, 70% are women, mothers and grandmothers who have dedicated their lives to serve in Canada, and in return, Canada has denied them promotional opportunities, has treated them inhumanely, and all of that results in a denial of basic human rights. And it also results in degradation. It also results in humiliation. Workers have told me that they have attempted suicide because they have nowhere to turn to, no recourse in the workplace, lack of support from their unions, and just nowhere to turn to, and that they have suicidal ideation. Experts have told us how this discrimination impacts your brain. It actually causes your brain to move in a particular way, which has a direct impact on your parenting, on your social life, on your relationships. So black workers are in a crisis in Canada's public service.
Canadians like to say, we're not that kind of country. We don't have that kind of racism here, which is partially exactly why we wanted to sit down and talk to you about the story. What do you say to Canadians who are surprised to be hearing this today?
Well, I would say the government's own data does not, it tells us very clearly and supports what workers have been saying, is that they're being denied opportunities. They're asked to train new employees. They're good enough to train new employees. They're good enough to act for a temporary period in a higher position. But those positions almost always goes to white employees and some racialized employees. So my message to Canadians are black people want to fully participate, and they're being denied that opportunity at the highest level in the largest employer in Canada. So listen to us, be an ally, and let's work together, because we want to make Canada a better place and to fully participate in Canada.
I imagine a tremendous financial consequence too, because federal government pensions are based on the rank you retire at. So if you're never promoted, then that's having a significant impact. How has the government responded so far to your proposed class action lawsuit?
Well, the government is speaking from both sides of its mouth. They're saying one thing publicly, and they're fighting black workers in court. They've just brought in an expert from the US to challenge their own data. They continue to bring motions to delay the case. The government has fully acknowledged that this issue exists in all of its institutions, and that the pain and damage that it causes is real. And then it shows up in court fighting black workers, forcing black workers to recount the trauma that they've endured at the hands of the government for decades.
Nicholas, what needs to happen going forward? How would you like to see the government respond, and what changes need to be made?
Well, firstly, the government needs to come to the table with workers and work with us to create those solutions that is necessary. And that is the legislative changes, amendments to the Employment Equity Act. We're seeking to create a separate and distinct category for black workers under the legislation to ensure that black workers are not left behind when it comes to hiring and promotional opportunities. We're also seeking accountability through an accountability commission to police the public service to ensure that that black workers do not face this discrimination again. And we are presently building a national and international coalition with organizations from across the country and internationally as well, to bring attention to this issue that is happening in Canada. We're scheduled to make a major announcement next week, so stay tuned on that.
We will absolutely be tuning in for that announcement. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.